Welcome to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast, featuring in-depth interviews with people in hip-hop culture, based out of New England. Leeds. Fire! How are we doing today?
Mr. Leedz. Really scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to podcast guests.
I'm glad you have a high opinion of yourself.
That's what Ed O.G. told me the other day. I was talking to him, and he said that he'd actually run into you the night before at some event that was honoring him at like the Wilbur or something.
Berkeley,
that's what it was. And I told him that I was going to be on the podcast the following week, and made that same joke. And he said the same thing. I said, Leedz has had some relatively famous people on his podcast, some pretty decent names on there. And I was like, "You been on there?" It's like, no, he's never had me on there. So I beat Ed O.G.
No, Ed O.G.'s been on you.
Clearly, it was a very memorable experience.
Clearly, in his defense, it was early. It was early when I first started out, but he was on here. Check out that episode; it's a good one.
Cannabis affects the memory.
I've heard that,
as does old age, and not that I'm saying anything bad about Edo, but I'm old, and he's got a few years on me.
And on that note, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Leedz Edutainment Podcast. We got a very special guest today, a man that wears many hats, including the brand he is currently selling right now, Tical.
Mr.
Sam Gerber, a.k.a. Sly Young, a.k.a. a lot of other things I probably shouldn't say on camera, but...
Probably a lot of other things. Sly Young's been gone for a while. Blunt Man Sam is the newest one, the easiest one to remember.
For you.
For me. Did I mention that marijuana affects the memory?
Yes, it does. I'm still recovering, and I haven't smoked weed in 15 years.
Yeah, I know. 15 years ago, I used to smoke a lot of weed with you, and then that changed drastically.
Me and you have known each other a long time now.
Oh, God. It's probably been close to 20 years.
Yeah, it is, I think. And we're definitely going to talk about that, but I like to always go back. You got an interesting story because you are from you have immigrant parents from the Ukraine.
I myself am an immigrant.
I forgot about that because you were technically born in Italy in transit on their way over here, correct?
I was born en route to America, just outside of Rome, Italy. Back in the late 70s, used to be part of the immigration process, going from what was then the Soviet Union to the States, and was almost always a stop in Italy. Oftentimes Austria as well, but almost everybody went through Italy and would live there for various periods of time. And my mother was in the third trimester, so they didn't want her traveling. Rather than being born in the States, which was the plan for my folks, I ended up being born and coming to the States 6 weeks later.
So technically, you're an Italian immigrant.
Technically, I am in fact an Italian immigrant.
Buongiorno.
Yeah, it was funny when I went back to Italy, 20 something years later with my family. I was all like gung ho to go and see the hospital where I was born, and I was all ready to go. And my mother and my sister were like, "We're in Rome. Colosseum is here. You want to go to a hospital?" And my mother said, "No, I've been there already." And I went there by myself, and it was the most anticlimactic thing of all time. It's just a hospital.
Yeah, it's like me. Like the hospital I was born in was Lynn Hospital, which is now a Stop and Shop. So talk about anticlimactic. I was born, as ST Knack says, I was born in the salad dressing aisle.
SD Knack, he's been at it for a minute too.
Oh yeah. So your parents are both Ukrainian,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
They come to the States. You're born in transit. You land in Newton, or did you land somewhere else, like to live?
No, it took us a while to make it to Newton. We first lived in Boston. From there, we went to uh, right on the Rosendale, West Roxbury line. I lived in a little housing project out there, um, which is now a gated community. I drove by it the other day.
Is
Uh,
that the one? Is that right off of the main, like the main road there,
Off
Washington
of
Street there?
Washington Street, yeah, like
Yeah, I know exactly. I think I know which
near
one you're talking
LaGrange,
about.
it's kind of tucked in down a little hill. And it
Yeah,
used
is
to
it?
be Section 8, when we lived there in the 80s. And I drove through there and I wanted to like just for nostalgic purposes, I had a few minutes on my hand and wanted to like drive through and see the old days. Years and years. And then there was like a guy at the gate trying to stop me and I drove
I think
away.
I've delivered food there. I think I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah. We lived there for a while and then my folks moved to Newton,
Yeah,
mid 80s.
Newton, Newton, which is I would Newton. All right, so you are Newton North or South? You always get this screwed up.
South. Newton
What
South,
the,
yeah.
what is
Newton
the
North
difference?
had all the athletics and Newton South had all the scholastic stuff, the
I
academics.
remember someone coming up to you saying, "I went to Newton North," and you were like, "I feel sorry for you."
It's a terrible thing to have to go through.
Why? Why was Norton? When I think of Newton, I don't think of a divided town. I think of
For
a
one
bunch of
reason and one reason only is that they were the rivals.
That's why you felt bad.
The new school that they've built since then is beautiful. It's almost like a college campus out there.
I know, yeah. I talked to my boy my boy Shield, who's from Sharon, and their school's the same way.
Yeah.
Sharon, Newton,
Have a lot in common.
heavily have a lot known for their Jewish heritage, their Jewish citizens that be living there, and you
Right.
are no exception to that rule.
Nice. No, still live in Chestnut Hill.
So what's it like growing up in Newton? Because to most people out here, Newton's like this kind of like Jewish village.
Yeah,
that's
yeah. It's
that's over there.
uneventful. It was uneventful, little obnoxious.
Also,
As soon as I was old enough to not hang out in Newton, I got out of Newton, started hanging out in Brighton, working in a pool hall. But no, it was at the end of the day, it was safe. It was a little on the boring side, which is, I guess, the better option to be uneventful. As part of the reason why I moved back here, was that I've got a son now, and eventually I would love for him to be a part of that Newton school system, but he's not even 2 yet, so I got a ways to go.
Newton also has a lot of Russians and Ukrainians living there as well, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Now
Newton
that's
Road.
since I've known you, you've always had like a big role in that community. Talk to me about that community, what it's like, because you're coaching soccer for Russians.
Yeah, yeah.
You know a lot of Russian. You speak Russian, or
I am fluent in Russian.
is Ukraine? Forgive me. Is Ukrainian and you Russian? They speak the same language. Russia speak the same language.
No, not. I mean, Ukrainian and Russian are different languages.
Okay.
When my folks lived there, my folks technically never lived in Ukraine. My
Yeah, 'cause
folks
it's
only
all
lived in the
Russia.
Soviet Union,
Right.
not
Right.
even Russia. My folks never
Right.
lived in Russia. They only lived in the Soviet Union.
Forgive me
And
for my history.
it's a common misconception. Anyone from any of those Eastern European countries is just considered a Russian in the eyes of most Americans. Um, that's been a little more or a little less the case lately since Russia and Ukraine are at war with
I
one
heard
another.
something about that. I heard
Yeah,
something was going on. I heard something was going
a
on
little
over
bit,
there. People.
a little bit. And so people are starting to realize that Russia and Ukraine are two very, very different things. And the languages are different, but my parents growing up under Soviet oppression, you know, they weren't even considered Soviet citizens because they were Jewish. So in order to be a citizen of the Soviet Union, you had to be a member of the Communist Party, you had to be a member of the Russian Orthodox Church, and all of those things. And if you were not all of those things, you were really a second-class citizen, in some cases almost an enemy of the state. My great-grandfather got arrested numerous times for having religious services in his basement. Um, and so, yeah, there's a lot of that going on there. But the language
Is that why your parents left? Did they leave because of this oppression? Is that why, or was it just like come to America, a land of opportunity?
absolutely come to America and have the next generation not have to go through what they went to that extent. You know, being a non-Soviet in the Soviet Union was not necessarily an easy thing. And so, yeah, they got the hell out of there. They planned on me being born here, but you know, timing.
They just couldn't get enough spaghetti in Italy, so they stayed a little longer.
I mean, fuck, man, it makes you killer pasta out there in Italy.
Everyone I talk to that goes to Italy says they love it. So here you are.
Do a J.
I wouldn't take anything less. Oh, I'm surprised it's a J these days. Usually you get a little pen that you're hitting.
I do have the pen, but this is a special occasion. I don't even smoke flower in the house, which is why I've got windows open and fans on everywhere. But
flower, we're gonna get real technical today. So you know, since you're lighting up, how old were you when you first started smoking weed? Talk to me about that experience.
Late by a lot of people's standards.
Well, it's Boston,
I've spoken to a lot of people who started smoking and consuming cannabis, you know, in the early teenage years, but I didn't really get into it until the very end of high school. So I was practically 18 by the time I got into it. I didn't like it that much at first. With my Eastern European roots, you know, I would see the older generation throwing back vodka, throwing back cognac, and that was kind of the way things were done. So it took me a little bit longer to make that shift away from alcohol and towards cannabis.
Yeah, the Russian with the vodka, man. What is the deal with that? I mean, it's like almost like it's almost like you have to like chug a whole bottle of vodka to socialize.
Yeah. But typically that chugging and socializing is done in an environment, a lot of food, a lot of like really rich foods, a lot of dancing, a lot of singing, a lot of, you know, the Ukrainians and the Russians, we know how to party.
And a lot of ping pong.
Ping pong, you know, these guys will take it serious. If you are a casual ping pong player, you can't fuck with these guys.
I've seen it. I've seen it in action.
Really into it, and I've seen it get heated. Every group of Russians and Ukrainians has that one friend with the ping pong table in the basement, and there's always a fucking support column somewhere getting in the way. Yeah. But they take the ping pong not as seriously as the soccer, but definitely they can take it very seriously. Or playing cards. The Russians have this card game called Durak, and it gets very, very intense. Money can be involved sometimes.
No, I'm surprised not all the time.
More often than not.
So you started smoking weed in high school, the end of high school. From what I remember, you started getting a little bit of trouble right around this time.
Yeah, it was a little shortly thereafter. I was probably about 23 when I got arrested in Brookline for possession of cannabis and possession of cannabis paraphernalia. Ironically, I was arrested in front of the Brookline Savings Bank on Route 9, which is ironic. A dispensary. The building that I was arrested in front of for weed is the Netta dispensary in Brookline on Route 9.
and as well as another Jewish, known for its Jewish community.
Yeah, that was the other rivals. It was Newton North and Brookline High.
Is Coolidge Corner technically the Jewish Mecca of Massachusetts?
Coolidge Corner has had some very Jewish music videos filmed in it.
Yeah,
Shout out
we're gonna
Kosher
get into that.
Bills.
We're gonna
Shout out.
get into that. We're gonna get into that for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, I mean, a little less so now that Rubens isn't there, but I'm pretty sure Zaftig's is still out that way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, definitely, I love it. It's 5 minutes down the road.
Shout out Coolidge Corner, the movie theater too, because the movie theater, me and you used to see so many great movies there.
That was basically the what our friendship was based off of was at first hip hop and love of independent films. And
Yes.
we just you had the shows going and I had the photography thing going, so those two things merged, and closing the stores out at 9 p.m., able to catch that 9:40
Yep.
flick at Coolidge or Kendall or something like that. That was damn near 20 years ago.
That was awesome too, because this is before like all the streaming platforms and everything. Where what I really loved about Boston is that you had all these indie theaters. You had Coolidge Corner, you had Kendall, you had I think West Newton had a good indie theater. And in the beginning,
Still
when
does.
I came to Boston, the beginning, Copley had a really good theater that had like indie films in there as well. And
Is it the same one that later became the AMC?
no, it was in Copley Square, the mall. I think it's like it's not Saks, it's a department store now, right near Legals and everything. It was right there. Um, you could see these movies. You could see these movies in these theaters that you couldn't see in the big boy theaters, the AMC's and all those things. You couldn't get to these movies, and I love that. And thank God you tagged along, me and you. We close up shop in the Prue where we met in the Prue.
At the Prue.
You were selling cameras, I was selling cell phones.
Yeah.
We were neighbors, and
right next to each other. Kiosks at the Prudential Mall.
same age. You're a month older.
Never let me forget that month.
You're literally 1 month older. You're June 6th, I'm July 6th. Yeah. And that's how we connected. And but you also had a hip hop background though. You knew I was starting Leedz, and you listened to hip hop.
I did listen to hip hop, and I listened to a lot of underground hip hop and a lot of weird shit. Right. And based on the size of the rooms that you were booking at the time, you were really able to capitalize on rappers that were off the beaten path and in the underground world, which I love that shit. Or if they were popular 15 years ago.
They were popular in the 90s, and they were on the way, and they weren't so popular anymore. Good chance Leedz was going to book them.
Oh, it was a golden time at Boston hip hop shows.
So talk to me about hip hop with you, in your introduction to it, and your experience with it in Newton as a Russian. I want to know you.
In my younger days, I was more of a headbanger. Listened to metal. I listened to Metallica and stuff like that. And hip hop wasn't necessarily on my radar. And then a few things kind of happened all at once. I listened to Body Count, so I learned about who Ice-T was.
We're similar there.
And a few songs came out that really were just really cool, even though that wasn't what I was listening to. Mr. Bob Dabalina by Del. I still to this day one of my favorite MCs, if not my favorite living MC. And Diggable Planets came out, and there was a bunch of other cool shit that came out, and I started noticing it. And House of Pain came out, and here's this dude running around in a Larry Bird jersey. And I grew up around here in the 80s loving Larry Bird, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
You're a big fan of Handsome Boy Modeling School.
Both of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
they still to this day are two of my favorite albums.
Yeah, great. I mean, everybody you mentioned is great. I listened to all of it as well. And you mentioned sports. You were also big into sports. You were big into baseball, right? Like baseball was one of your favorite sports. You even pitched, didn't you?
I did, I was bigger than the other kids in Little League into high school. So pitched, played a lot of baseball, loved going to Sox games, still do. Was very passionate sports fan. Until I moved away, it's very difficult being an out of market sports fan, especially living on the West Coast. Patriots games are not on local TV. You've got to go somewhere that's got it at like 10 or 11 o'clock, going to a bar.
Shout out, yeah, Matty Harris. Shout out Matty Harris. He says he has the same problem. Goes out of his way in LA.
You have to like get one of those like packages. It's difficult to be an out of market sports fan, and combine that with being really busy working in the cannabis industry, and now being a father. I don't have tons of time for that anymore.
But you were really, when I met you, you were a pretty die-hard Sox fan. Like
I still am. I just don't have the bandwidth to follow it and care as much as I used to. I still love everything about it. I've watched that Ken Burns baseball documentary twice, beginning to end, including
Speaking of that, here's always our question. What is the best baseball movie made? Personal faves.
Oh God, there's so many good ones. The best baseball featured in a movie is the baseball sequence in The Naked Gun.
Yeah, absolutely. Me and you were 100% agreed with that. But the best baseball scene of all time is The Naked Gun.
Still the topic of so many group texts. Shout out to Soba guys. But yeah, man, there's a bunch of good baseball movies, and it depends on how you categorize them. So some of them are like really good films, like actual movies that are great films, even if they weren't about baseball. 8 Men Out, that's a great one. Ty, the Cobb rather. Cobb.
I never seen Cobb. I heard he was kind of an asshole, though, wasn't he?
Oh, he was one of the biggest assholes who ever lived. He was a blatant racist, and he was just an absolute piece of trash. But Tommy Lee Jones killed it.
I got to see that just for him. I'm a huge Tommy Lee Jones fan.
God, Field of Dreams.
Tough to beat. Tough to beat. Field of Dreams.
42. Solid, unbelievable.
Oh, that's Jackie Robinson, right?
Movie.
Yeah. Harrison Ford as
Harrison Ford as Kennesaw Mountain Lane is just like, he stole those scenes. He's
Is Branch Rickey? Is that who he played?
Is he Branch Rickey?
Yeah, it's Branch Rickey.
No, you're right. It was Branch Rickey.
He killed
wrong commissioner. But yeah.
Great baseball movies you named. I'm gonna have to go on the record say Major League.
Major League is probably the best as far as just like entertaining to watch. It might not be the greatest cinematic thing of all time, but just Major League. And though you can extend it into the second and even to the third one, which are terrible movies, but I'll still watch it. People don't even realize they made 3 of them. There's a Academy movie in Moscow. People don't realize they made that.
No, they know about the Moscow. They don't know really about the Major League 3. 2, I went to 2 in the theater, and I was like, they're probably so anticipated for it, and it wasn't nearly as good, but it wasn't horrible. It wasn't horrible. 3 looked horrible.
It was a bad movie, but still. Baseball movie, so I'll watch it.
Who was left in 3? Who from the original was left in 3?
Corbin Burnson
Of
and
course he was.
Corbin Burnson, I think, was the owner of the minor league team or something like that. And then, Carlton Fisk, Tom Berenger.
Carlton Fisk was in the third one
No,
too.
no, Tom Berenger just really looks like Carlton Fisk, and they're both catchers.
Yeah, baseball, Moneyball. I really liked Moneyball. I thought Moneyball was really good.
Moneyball was great. It had a lot of Scott Hatterberg in it, which I like.
I thought what's his name played Scott Hatterberg too. He's the guy in the Jurassic Park movies, I think.
Yeah.
Petey Wang. It's Petey Wang. No, it's not Petey Wang. Is it Petey Wong or Petey Wang? I'm sorry, I'm gonna get in trouble for this.
It's BD Wong. It's definitely BD Wong.
For those that don't understand, this joke's a little inside, but most people wouldn't know who BD Wong is, but Sam is a encyclopedia of wonderful information that no one else knows.
I like to say useless information.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to put BD Wong and useless together.
No. BD Wong is a wonderful actor and is certainly I do know some good important stuff too.
Yeah, if you ever want to get your butt kicked, go play Sam in Jeopardy. You'll get smoked.
I like Jeopardy. I've always meant to take the test to get on Jeopardy.
You got to get on there. I can't believe your high ass can still remember all this shit, but he's a freaking
useless shit. I did get invited to be on a game show a long time ago. Win Ben Stein's Money. Remember that one?
No shit. Oh yeah, that was a classic.
I was like, might have been 19 or early 20s. And they invited me, but it would have involved me to like pay my own way to go to Hollywood. And like 19-year-old me was like, there's no fucking way I can make that happen.
I think that would have been a hell of a story, though.
Yeah, it would have been fun. It would have been embarrassing. It's taken a long time to accumulate all this useless information. 20-something years ago, it would have been
terrible. So moving forward, me and you connect at in the Prudential Center in the beginning of my career, which the Verizon kiosk, which was my first Leedz Edutainment office.
That's right. That's right. So, Leedz Edutainment it's very, very infancy at that point.
Oh, it was straight infancy. Yeah. And I was selling cell phones, meeting people for flyers at the kiosk, booking shows, and you at the time were just coming to the shows as a photographer because you were big. Digital cameras were very popular. This is before the phones got this. Cameras on the phones were good enough. There were cameras on phones, but they weren't quality enough.
Terrible. Yeah, it's not.
So you still had good cameras for sale, and shout out the camera center, your father's business, Felix.
Yeah, from 1944 to 2015.
It was in the family that long?
No, it was only in the family when my old man bought the place in like 96 or something.
And you had two other locations in.
There were total 3 at one point.
2 in Government Center.
Yeah, one on State Street in the Financial District, one in Faneuil Hall, and then the kiosk at the Prue.
It was a lucrative business for a while. It's just unfortunately one of those things that gets taken out by technology and camera phones and just.
I managed to keep that place operational for 3 years longer than Ritz Camera, which to me was a wonderful achievement, at least. Fuck Ritz Camera.
The only one that beat you is Newtonville Camera.
Newtonville Camera. I'm actually friends with the owner's daughter, same age as I, both from Newton, both in the camera business, and we've been friends for a long time.
Did you date her?
No.
Shocked.
I never. It was 100% a completely platonic friendship. And we used to go out to dinner. We'd try to go out once a month, and we'd switch off who would pay. And no.
Who would pay? You mean which company would pay?
Ask me about work. Ask me how the store is doing. Write it off.
Company card, company card. Good for you. But yeah, you started coming to the shows and taking pictures, really cool photos. The one the debut I remember in my head is Kool Keith. The Kool Keith show. The second one I did, and you came through and we're taking photos of Keith that night, and like we were taking photos of him in like the mechanical room at the Middle East. It was a very bizarre experience.
That wasn't the one that was at church. That was later.
No, it's downstairs. It was Middle East, Kool Keith. It was his second time I brought him back. And yeah, you showed up at that with the camera. And we kind of you seemed like you had an interest in this thing that was going on with us. And you became a good friend and a regular attendee at all these events.
Kool Keith was one of my, and still is one of my favorite rappers. And yeah, when you told me you were bringing him out, it was like, all right, this is definitely like cool. This is legit, you know.
Yeah.
I was impressed. You were bringing out one of my favorite rappers at a really well known venue. You know, it was actually legit. It was hard to scrape together shows to get, you know, everybody in the door and everybody the ability to let people know about these shows was way more limited back then. There's a lot more
all hand-to-hand flyer in forums.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your occasional Phoenix or weekly dig write-up.
Yeah.
Week of.
Shout out Chris.
But yeah, cool. Stop you real quick. Favorite Kool Keith album?
Oh, it's hard to say. Dr. Doom, Dr. Octagon, maybe Black Elvis.
Those are the big three.
You know, they're all just so good. Sex Style, really slept on. Sex
Literally.
Style, great one. Yeah, I've done it.
Octagon, the Automator, his relationship with Automator, his relationship with Cutmaster Kurt, I think is like the best Kool Keith. I mean, Ultramatic MCs obviously was great,
of course,
but solo Keith, and he was huge because of those albums. I mean, when I was first doing,
it was a big deal. Like in the underground hip hop scene on the East Coast, he was as big as it got at that time.
My first show with him was the Diesel Truckers album release party.
I was just about to mention Diesel Truckers.
So that was my first one. And that did like 400, almost sold out. And then the one we did was a little less, but still packed. You know, the attendance went down from there. But that's how big he was. And that wasn't even the peak of his career at that point. So he was, you know, and Keith, it's funny because when I first booked Keith, the booking agent at the time, Kevin Hoskins, called me. He's like, yo, I got to talk to you about Kool Keith. Because prior to that, me booking him, he did a show Halloween at the Middle East, and it was a complete nightmare where he showed up mad late and just hucked pornos and fried chicken at everybody. And
I was at that
20 minutes of luck. You were?
Kool Keith and Ice-T.
Ooh, Analog Brothers. Ooh, you saw that at the Middle East?
Oh yeah, I was there. My buddy Tim, shout out Tim. It was on Halloween, and he was in costume. So he had on like the skin tight bodysuit with the coconut bikini and the grass skirt, and we went to the Diesel Truckers show, and it was just.
What were you wearing?
I was not in costume.
So that must have looked really weird with you showing up with.
I'm pretty sure it was me and Tim and all 6'7" of Blake, and only Tim was in a costume. There were some costumes there.
Tell me there's a photo of that somewhere. There's a photo.
I highly doubt it.
But that's like the great weirdness of Kool Keith. It just brought the weirdness out of everybody.
You never knew what you were gonna get.
Yeah.
And risk when you booked him.
Yeah, it was he was He was quite the performer. He still performs, still does his thing, man. And I probably from that show, I probably did 6 or 7 Kool Keith shows in my entire career.
Yeah.
I'd say he's probably one of the most one of the bigger one of the most booked artists I've done.
He happened to line up with my birthday one year.
Yeah.
We had a Kool Keith birthday show.
One of the funniest shows we did was Kool Keith and Tim Dog.
Oh, that was a great show.
It wasn't anybody there, but it was a great show for people who were there.
Was that Harper's Ferry?
Yes, it was.
Oh man, Tim Dog.
And obviously shortly after that was all the Tim Dog controversy where he faked his own death. Is he dead? Is he alive? We don't even know.
I was just about to say, didn't he pass away shortly thereafter?
Then there's all this, I don't even know, because there was all this controversy that didn't. He just did it to get out of some money.
I was under the impression he was dead. If he's there, hopefully he's okay and out of debt.
But yeah, so many shows from there where you were just a photographer. You know, you originally saw Parker was hosting the shows.
Yeah.
And then Ricky Mortis came into the picture.
Parker moved away. Ricky Mortis took over. And around the time that Ricky Mortis took over, I did a couple of co-hosting. I was terrified to talk in front of people, and we did a couple of co-hosted shows with me and Johnny Regal, and then me and Ricky Mortis, and did a few little hip hop LOLs and hip hop 101s in little hole in the wall venues scattered throughout the city.
It was funny because it was like your personality at the time. I couldn't see hosting a show because you were, you're kind of like a quieter guy. You're not a really animated guy like Parker and Ricky. So you're just not your personality. You're more of like Stephen Wright.
A little high, like deadpan delivery is not for everybody.
It's a little more animated than Stephen Wright, but it's what I'm saying. And
Stephen Wright's a fucking zombie.
So when you came to me and you were like, I want to host the shows, I was like, really? I was like, I couldn't see it. But then you were like, you were pretty adamant about it. Like, this is what I want to do. And the timing just worked out. And then all of a sudden you became my number one host.
I couldn't tell you why I wanted to. I just thought that I could.
I think it was because you never were able to make Sly Young Sings the Blues album and you needed another creative outlet.
You needed a platform. and you know what? The Sly Young Sings the Blues album has never been officially killed off. It's always kind of just collected dust on the corner of the Leedz table.
Just on the back burner. But this is the transition from Sam Gerber into Sly Young, the host. The name Sly Young becomes the name Sly Young, aka the Super Jew.
Sly Young, the Super Jew,
becomes the official host of Leedz Entertainment hip hop shows.
Do you remember when the first like major show that I hosted was?
No, talk about it because I don't remember.
So after Peter Parker moved away, Ricky started hosting the shows, and at some point, you and Ricky had a bit of a falling out, and back then, this is before you got sober. A falling out with Leedz was, it was a little more of an animated thing. It was
a little more common back then.
You were much less concerned about burning bridges back then. I mean, flamethrower.
That was
so the fireworks. There was fireworks. It was. You guys know. He wanted to be more of an artist.
We're gonna air this whole situation out. Apparently, we're
gonna. No. He wanted to be an artist. He had other things that he wanted to do, and he went a different way. And the first big show, and I was not comfortable quite as a host at the time. was Bone Thugs and Harmony
That was your first one we did?
downstairs at the Middle East, and it was like I want to say like a day or two before the show, and you were like, "Hey, I'm gonna need you to host this fucking Bone Thug show." I said, "Wait, what?" Like sold out, packed to the rafters. Bone Thugs and Harmony at the Middle East downstairs.
Fire. Fire
Great
show.
show. Even I couldn't have fucked it up.
Well, you really took the ball and ran with it because you were a great host. And you weren't your stereotypical hip hop host, but
Now,
what I believe, your ability to connect with the crowd and the artists and be and just be a people person. You did an amazing job with that,
appreciate the
and
kind words.
yeah, everyone loved you, man. Even,
You know
even
what it
if they
was?
were laughing, they were like, even
Oh,
if they were like, who the hell is this guy? I kind of like him.
I mean, you go under the name Cy Young the Super Jew, hosting hip hop shows around New England.
Middle East, the classic line was Middle East, get ready. Western Front, are you alive tonight?
Marvin Gilmore, Western Front.
The Western Front, really, those shows, the McGann's shows, was just, the Middle East were great shows. A lot of people remember those ones, but a lot of people don't know about the Western Front and the
Western
McGann
Front.
shows.
Before it was a chain of dispensaries, it was a
Yes.
music venue in Marvin Gilmore Square.
Yeah. And, you cut your teeth on those events,
Sure
more
did.
so the Western Front, rocking these shows in front of 10, 20, 30 people tops, Thursday night cold, and
Tuesday
still,
night in the middle of a blizzard.
well, it's
You
only
know,
Thursday at Western Front because they were only open Thursday through Saturday. But that was what you did, man. And you were great at, when I needed you to read certain things or promote certain products or sponsorship, you were good with all of that. And yeah, you really gave a personality to my company. I thank you for that.
I appreciate the kind words, man. I'm sorry it had to be me. Uh, I look at like Peter Parker was an amazing host. Ricky Mortis, one of the funniest people I've ever known.
Right.
After I left, uh, uh, Champ Chuck was doing it for the longest time, and he's fucking great. But most recently, Mr. PSA has been
Yep.
doing shows everywhere. I saw him do the Freedom Rally. I was working the Tical booth at the Freedom Rally. I seen him down there, and more recently, him and DJ Slipwax actually came out and played the Lowkey Dispensary grand open party thing that we did in the parking lot behind the dispensary. Um, and
It came out.
I think he's probably the best out of everybody because he's also a rapper, so he can just like take his wireless mic and work the crowd and rap and if there's ever times where you're waiting on someone or you're having technical difficulties and you need to kill time unexpectedly, when you don't have any partners or events or anything else to shout out, that's the true test of if you can host a show or not. And he can just, in addition to being a great host, can just like freestyle, and he's a really good rapper too. So
Yeah.
he's great.
Out of all the shows that you hosted, what are some of your most notable memories, if you can?
Ooh. There's a lot to filter through because you gotta, this
Yeah.
was the better part of a decade. This was like a solid, almost like 8 years,
Yep,
because
it
I
was.
moved away in 2015, and when was the Pru? It was.
Well, hosting wise, I want to know hosting memories. So, which is
No,
pretty
of
much,
course.
I'm thinking that's like 5-year run of like 2010 ish to 2015. What's some of your most notable hosting experiences?
There's been a few of them. I think that the one that still sits on top of the mountain was when you did the Slane show, where Danny Boy and Everlast were there, and I think DJ Lethal was there too. It was
Yeah,
a
that's
Slane
yeah,
Ill
no,
Bill show, wasn't it? And like
yeah,
it turned into a La Coca Nostra show,
it
like,
did.
and
That was great.
that was absolutely.
You didn't host that though.
I didn't hope.
No, you didn't. You might have hosted the Slane show, but it wasn't that one. That's when Parker was still around, I think, or Ricky. It was one of those guys.
Either way, that was the most. It might not have been hosting. You're right, but that was the most memorable, event and experience I think that I had throughout the entire time.
That was a big deal at the time. As a promoter, I was only probably maybe like a year, under 2 years in, and having just Everlast and House of Pain show up, Danny Boy,
crazy.
Lethal, just hey, we're here at the Middle East unannounced. Was like, whoa, dude. And shout out Ill Bill and Slane for making that happen, because they're the ones that made that happen. And
There was another memorable Ill Bill Slane show that I think was
oh boy,
Western Front.
no, thinking Harper's Ferry.
Harper's Ferry, yes, that's what I meant to say. Harper's Ferry.
When Bomb
Um,
Shot jumped on
Bomb
stage.
Shot coming out on stage and swinging, starting to fight, falling into the crowd.
I have to say this because I got to get this right, otherwise I'm going to hear about it. Yeah, Bomb Shot showed up at a Slane, and was an Ill Bill show, but Slane was hyping for Bill at the time, and
They were working a lot together at the time.
it wasn't like a Slane solo performance. It was like Slane was touring with Bill as the hype, and Bomb Shot showed up wasted, and we didn't realize that there was beef there. And he was hanging out on the side, and Wizard Security was there. And Bomb Shot knew everybody, and he wasn't on the worst terms with the people there at that point in the beginning. And just out of nowhere,
Not that anyone knew of.
out of nowhere, he just rushed Slane on the stage, and Bill, but missed. He missed and went head down.
It was a haymaker, so it was not difficult to get out.
He missed, and he was drunk, I think, and he fell into the crowd, and he just started getting stomped, and that's when I had to intervene and pick him up and carry him out the side door, just so they wouldn't kill him, because I just thought it was going to kill him at that point. Didn't want death on my hands, and they got him out, and he ran off, and yeah, Bill and Slane were mad at me because security wasn't on point, but Longshot was getting back. He just knew too many people, so it wasn't like people just thought he was supposed to be there. You know what I mean? That was Harper's Ferry, where you were on the side. You had that side VIP area.
I didn't see the whole carry out thing. I was on the side of the stage when that happened, kind of, right at that security gate, just hanging out with Wizard Security, really. And seen him there, and naturally knew who he was, and hey, what's up? And he went right past and did his thing. I didn't see the whole get carried out thing. I had to, me and Ricky were trying to take.
Well, it wasn't really a carry out. It was like me grabbing him and throwing him out the side door so nobody kills him.
I remember getting him out of the building quickly after that, but I don't know that
was it.
I think I was on stage.
But that caused the problem.
I ran into him like seriously 2 days later at Government Center. I was walking up to the train station because I was working at Faneuil Hall at the time, and he just came up to me out of nowhere. They said something funny. And I was like, dude, what the fuck was that all about? And he said, man, I hadn't done any asshole shit in a long time, so needed to do some asshole shit. I'm like, all right, I get that. That makes sense,
Yeah,
got on the train and went on my way.
Bombshot was a pretty controversial character out here. And I met him through Rhetoric, and he was always cool with me, and I was new, and I was like,
Yeah,
I
same
was
with me.
working. I put him on some shows, and everybody was mad at me for that. And I did his mixtape, and everybody was mad at me for that. I think
The
probably
Kill 'Em
I
All
like.
mixtape.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, I remember that one. That was a good one.
And I think part of me wanted to be a controversial character at that point, or align myself with controversial characters. Um, but then he just and then it was then he just disappeared. And I never have seen or heard from him in a long time.
Yeah, neither have I. And we had a bunch of friends in common. Remember
Yeah.
Reto,
Yeah.
Gage. I was
Yeah.
I was close with Gage.
But yeah. Well, any other more positive experiences that stand out in
Oh,
your mind?
well, it's not that there wasn't any shortage of positive experiences. Most of them were positive experiences. The ones that stand out aren't necessarily positive experiences. Is the bottle getting broken over somebody's head. I think that was at the Western Front. Um, the knife that came out.
You're just airing out all my dirty laundry right now. Let's set Ned up for a friggin' lawsuit real quick.
No. These things probably never happened. Most of it was imagined.
But yeah, you
A lot of cool stuff.
you broke up. I will say this: you disengaged a lot of fights too. What is the infamous? Oh, what was the infamous pick that we had of you breaking up the fight in the crowd? Was that Waka Flocka?
It could have been Waka Flocka or Lil B. Could have been Lil B. But it was a fight between two females in the second row.
That was
And
always the case. That happened so often. It
I
was
was
almost like
just
there was more
closer
fights
than
with.
any other security guard. I was like literally like 5 feet away. It's not like I'm not gonna jump in.
That picture is so funny because this it shows everybody in the crowd's facial reactions of this fight going on, and it's just a hilarious facial reaction.
That really was.
There was one kid like
Terrified. It was another kid who was wasted and like
yeah,
egging it on.
he's like yeah.
Couple just looking right at the camera, completely oblivious to the fact that there's a full-on fist fight between two. Like these two women could fight. This was
Oh
not
my
their
god.
first fight. They were experienced fighters, and they were like just swinging on each other, pulling their hair, and fucking closed fists and everything.
And I also want to thank you for also keeping it cool with a lot of the hip hop community that was kind of mad at me at that time. And you kind of were like the cool guy that people could talk to for Leeds.
Oh
And
yeah,
because I wasn't as cool and level headed back then as I feel like I am now. But
I diffused a lot of situations. I mediated a handful of them.
yes.
There was look, man. It was hip hop, and people in hip hop love the beefs. They love to hear that beef sizzle, and
Yeah.
some people actively searched for it. Some people it just found all the time. You were
Yeah.
somewhere in between.
I mean, I definitely participated a little too much in that controversy, but some of it was just business. Some of it was the way I handled it. But you, oh my friend, were always cool headed for the most part. I'd say 98% of the time.
Somebody had to be. There was a
uh,
couple.
no, there's a couple. We won't go into all of them, but there was a couple incidents where you got a little fired up. But all in all, you were the cool host that everybody loved, and you really personalized the Leeds experience.
It was. I really appreciate you saying that. It was. We had a really good time, and it was a fucking great time to be around. It was a great place to be. Um, Fond memories of it. Uh, there were a lot of really cool shows. Um, one of my more memorable hosting experiences. I got booed off the stage once.
Yeah. Which one?
It was at a currency show.
It's funny because you're the weed guy in currency.
And the reason that all those years I was so cool and I was cool with everybody was because I was selling them all weed.
Which we can say on camera now.
Absolutely. Having a lot of the sale of weed and flower and other cannabis products in the legacy market paved the way for me to be in the industry and work where I am now. But yeah, I sold, in addition to hosting all those shows and doing all those things that we've been talking about. Yeah, I sold a lot of weed to a lot of rappers.
And this is a good transition because eventually you're still hosting the shows, and then all of a sudden you get Camera Center's on its is on its way out. It's going out of business. It's nothing anybody's fault. It's just the nature of the market.
Yeah,
And
the brick and mortar camera store had been circling the bowl just as
yeah,
an industry for a number of years. Like
yeah,
I said, Ritz Camera, which was the biggest chain in the world, had been closed for over 2 years at that point.
yeah. And you were kind of like in this in between state where it was like, well, what the heck am I going to do? And I remember this because it was kind of like it was a difficult time for you because it was like, here's this family business going out.
Uh,
You don't really, you don't really know what the next move is. And I know what that feels
the
like.
idea of the family business is that I was
Right.
running it for the old man, and I was gonna and
Right.
eventually own it. It was going to be my business, and that was going to be my future.
Right.
And then clearly it was more than obvious that it wasn't sustainable.
Right. So that goes down and you're in this transition part. And then you get this amazing opportunity. And
Yeah,
this opportunity was that you were to go move out to Denver and oversee the opening of a dispensary. Now, at this time, it's 2015 ish, I'm guessing.
yeah, 2015.
Denver and Colorado is one of the few. Was it the only state that was legalized yet at that
No,
point?
no, there was a handful of them at the time, but it was one of
How
the
many? Like
first.
two or three?
Well,
From two.
California, or Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and maybe Alaska at that point, but there was like three or four of them.
All right. So, anyways, but Colorado's the big one because of Denver, and
Right.
and you're like, you get this opportunity to go start the cannabis. You have a history of selling cannabis that you've admitted. I have a
Yeah,
history of selling cannabis.
you did. You certainly
Unfortunately,
did.
mine ended a little more tragically than yours, but I'm very happy that you were able to transition into a legal situation.
Yeah,
And
very
and you
much so.
went out there and you went out there from a state, from being from Massachusetts your whole life, going out to picking up and moving to Denver, where it's now legal, overseeing this operation. What was that like?
It was a shock to the system for sure. It was the circumstances under which I went out there. Where I knew the guy that was a CFO of a company that had, you know, uh, he owned part of one dispensary, but they were being rebranded as a chain. And he was the CFO of the company and a partner in one of the locations. And he said, "Listen, I got this opportunity out here that is combining the two things that best out of anything, which is retail sales and cannabis. I'd run the
I'm not going to argue
retail
with that.
sales business, and my life was being in retail. And I consumed cannabis. I sold cannabis. I sold various forms of cannabis before they were popular. Like really, we were selling concentrates and edibles in 2013 in Massachusetts. And most people had no idea what dabs were in 2013 in Massachusetts. The blowtorches were scaring the shit out of people.
Yeah, I saw you use the blowtorch a few times. Felt like you were smoking crack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Um, Fast forward to now, 10 years later, and the concentrates industry, the high end craft concentrates industry in cannabis is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But he said basically, come on out here and you can take this one store, learn the industry, kind of cut your teeth on this one store, and then we want you to run the whole shebang bang, which is uh, for for retail, and there were 3 grows. So I wasn't doing any of the cultivation, but I was selling the flower wholesale, and I was having the trim sent out for to be made into concentrates
How much?
and stuff like that. So it was a huge shock to the system. It was a culture shock from growing up in Boston, living here my whole life. I was 35 years old when I moved out there. So
Right.
yeah, I was
And you're very close with your family.
very much so. And
Your
here I am
your
moving
parents as well as your
2/3 of the way
sister.
across the country, especially my sister. My
Yeah, I
grandmother
forgot to
was still
mention.
alive back then. I was really close with her, and she was already in a nursing home. But yeah, my sister was married. My mother, everybody that was close to me. My dad obviously been married a long time. The grandmother was in a nursing home, so everybody around me was kind of like all set in one way or another. And none of them needed me to be out here. The family business was closing, and this opportunity came up. The difficult part was I moved out there at the very end of March 2015, and then when I got there, I had a manager for a week and an assistant manager for 2 weeks, but and then the manager went on maternity leave, and then the assistant manager was going to move to Oregon in the second week. So literally, I had just gotten out there. I had no idea what anything was. And then the following week was 420. So moving out there and getting into the industry with like no formal training and just learning it on the fly and just
Rock and
bang.
roll,
It
baby.
was it was it was really um, a trial by fire. It set me up to be able to do what I do today. But man, it was a huge shock to the system. The 1-2 punch of the culture shock and how strict and strenuous the cannabis system industry is. We say in the industry that we're a compliance industry and we get to sell cannabis. But so getting hit with all that all at once while moving 2/3 of the way across the country and leaving my family and friends and Leedz Edutainment and everything behind. Um, yeah, that was a kick in the pants. But
Yeah, but I also think it was meant to be. Like like as much as I, didn't want to lose you as a friend moving over there. I knew like this had to happen. Like this is where you needed to go.
and the people around me that I'm closest to, whose opinions matter to me the most out of anybody in this world, all said the same thing. You
Yeah.
said it, my sister said it, Tim, Blake, everybody that I was really close with, like my most in a circle of friends and people that I would talk to about important life issues, all said the same thing. Like seriously, the timing of it lined up in the way that the family business closed down in January of 2015, and I moved out there in March of 2015.
Crazy. That's so, and I came to visit you out in Colorado right before Sonia opened. I was like, oh, let me go visit Sammy now. It's a good time before I'm gonna be open in a location. And yeah, Colorado was cool, man. We went off roading in the Jeep lifestyle.
The Jeep was oh man, I miss that Jeep. We unfortunately after I moved away from Colorado, uh I never got a chance to take the Jeep off-roading anymore. But while I was in Colorado, getting that thing up into the mountains was, man, it was a crazy thing to be up there. And I'm terrified of heights too, but we would do some gnarly stuff up in those mountains. I had a heavily modified, very capable vehicle that I
Yeah,
at one point managed to roll onto its lid and literally was hanging upside down, my
I
roof
remember
down.
that too. I remember the footage.
Yeah,
It was the
I
it
was
was it,
internet famous. People talk shit about me on some Facebook and G platforms. It was um, certainly not my finest moment. But the vast majority of the experiences up in mountains in Jeeps was great. Got to see some amazing things that not a lot of people get to experience. It's being up at 14, 15,000 feet or close to,
Rockies.
being able to see, there's just so many of those mountains, and being like at the top of one and just seeing tops of other ones is really something to experience, man. And I'm not much of a climber myself, so it was
No, you
those
come
Jeeps,
on.
um, yeah, those Jeeps were great. And when you came out to visit, we went to go to a show at Red Rocks, and that was a
Yeah,
hell of an experience. I've been to
yeah.
Red Rocks a couple of times. Having friends who were working in music and booking shows, a lot of them would plan visits around Red Rocks events, which made total sense. Lance the
It's one of the
Pants
illest
Tobin.
venues. It's one of the best
Lance Tobin
venues.
came out. It was a Jurassic 5
Ooh,
show with the Motet and the California Honey Drops.
nice.
It was
Yeah,
yeah.
I really loved Colorado when I visited you because I was like, here's this cool city. First of all, it's dispensaries everywhere. It was like even at that time,
Yeah.
there was a lot of
Every
dispensaries.
block. You could walk down Colfax Ave and would literally have more places that you could walk into to buy a $5 doobie than you could a $5 latte.
Yep. That's what it looks like Worcester.
People think Boston is starting to get saturated, and some towns are getting saturated. They don't understand what it is to see an oversaturated market like I did in
Denver was
Colorado
definitely that.
and in
Denver
Oregon.
was definitely that. But yeah, Colorado was cool because it was a cool city with cool things to do. It had Red Rocks, which was like I had been a fan of Red Rocks my whole entire like U2 made that album where they recorded it at Red Rocks. And I remember being like, oh, I'm gonna go there someday.
You and you
You know, we
too.
saw what? And we saw Bob Dylan there.
We did.
And we went to that castle place before. We had like venison, all this cool meat, that
The
game
fort.
that's up
Yeah.
before. Yeah. And then we went on that. We were in the part of you were part of that Jeep club, and we went up with all those guys up on the mountain, all these tough trails and what people were doing with their Jeeps. It was just and it was cool because you were in the city, but then you could go within driving distance, not too far, be on the mountains, in the mountains. And I just thought that that was the coolest thing.
It really was. And
And then you had Voodoo
it's
Donut,
what kept me
Voodoo
going
Donut.
up there. I was working my ass off in the industry, and just
Yeah,
it was being able to do that was my reset button out there
yeah.
on weekends. You couldn't reach me if you had to. There's no service out there.
No.
I had a CB radio so I could talk to other Jeeps.
So you end up leaving that job.
Yeah.
Then what happens then? Do you end up do you float around Denver? Or do you move right to Portland? What was the transition to Portland?
So I did the retail thing where with running retail sales and ops for Silver Stem for like a year and a half. And then I got hired by a concentrates company out there called Oleo. I spent a year with them. Um, they were already established in the medical market out there, and they needed a new salesperson to kind of bring them out into the recreational market. And I was a part of that. And so, yeah, about a year doing that. And then I got hired by a multinational MSO, this huge company called Open, which was like the original vape brand in Colorado, and they hired me while I was still living in Denver, and they shipped me out to Portland, Oregon, to run their Oregon sales office, um, and be their Oregon market sales manager out there. And while I was with them, is when they um, merged together with Slang Worldwide, and that they were uh, now a publicly traded company on the Canadian Securities Exchange. And so, yeah, like the very definition of corporate cannabis, where it is actually a publicly traded company that is in multiple states and multiple countries. Um, so that was a hell of an experience. Um, Things certainly changed drastically at that company after that happened. And then I went to working for, and it was about a year and a half that I was with them out there in Portland. And Portland, Oregon was even even further from home and even more different than than Denver was.
What was Portland? Stop you real quick. What was Portland, Oregon like? My uncle lives out there. I've never gone, but I heard it's a very interesting place. I'd like to know your perspective on it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting place. It's definitely it's not for everyone. They Portland takes pride in being very weird. There's a giant "Keep Portland Weird" sign that's a well-known landmark out there. Um, and the industry in Portland was very different than the industry in Colorado. Very different markets, very different demographics, very different pricing. There was a lot of different things out there. But Portland, um, you know, man, when COVID hit, Portland turned completely upside down on its head. Um, the state of Oregon is amazing. The state of Oregon is beautiful. The whole coast. I went did the entire 101 Pacific coast
Oh,
and
so
all the way
jealous.
down into the redwoods of Northern California.
Yeah,
Uh,
seen those.
it was just amazing. Bend, Central Oregon, and the high desert plains, and Southern Oregon, which is a completely different. Like Portland is rainy, and it's not unlike Seattle. It's like a 3-4 hour drive from Seattle. It's Boston to New York essentially, and they kind of have that similar weather thing. But Southern Oregon is at the top of the Emerald Triangle, so climate wise, it's like Mendocino County in California. So Southern Oregon is beautiful, and there's a lot to do. There's a lot to see out there. But Portland's not for everyone. I tried to enjoy it as best I could until everything shut down and shit went crazy.
Well, so you're out in Portland now. Years and years have gone by,
Yeah.
and then it's like, I forget. You have a child. Did you have it in Portland or do you have him in
No, no, no,
Massachusetts?
no. The child came later.
Okay, so let me backtrack.
Yeah.
So Portland, how did you end up? Everything comes full circle because how did you end up back in Massachusetts from Portland?
Via Rhode Island. Uh,
Ah,
I lived in Rhode Island for a while, so it was clear that you know Portland wasn't. There was a lot of stuff going on, violence and protests and drugs and homeless. I mean, it went so very differently after COVID hit, that it was like, yeah, it didn't seem like that it was sustainable out there. So we decided to, come back home essentially to be closer to family. Had stayed with my sister for a few months. Her and her husband were nice enough to let us stay there for a while. Got our own place in Lincoln, Rhode Island. And then my son was born when I was living in Lincoln, Rhode Island. So he was
That's
born
nice.
at Women and Infants in Providence. And, he'll be 2 this upcoming January. So I moved back in like 2020 after COVID hit, and he was born almost 2 years ago.
So you didn't move back to Rhode Island because you had a job offer? You just like, I need to get out of Portland.
No, I really thought that with all the industry experience that I had, both in retail and wholesale and in multiple like competitive markets, with like, a good record and good references and all that stuff, like I didn't think that it was going to be super complicated to get a gig. Quite frankly, I probably um, thought that it was going to be, easier than it was. It was a little bit of a deflating experience. I couldn't get a gig right away. So I didn't have any Massachusetts experience. And every market, every set of rules, every set of laws is so unique that if you don't have experience, it's difficult to get, a lot of people don't want to put you in leadership roles, and a lot of people don't necessarily entrust somebody that's not familiar with the regulations that you have to work within. So I had to take a little bit of a step back and take like an assistant general manager role to get a
That's
gig
cool.
here, which is totally thanks to our mutual friend, Lisa Finelli Fallon. Shout out Lisa in Boston Cannabis Week, because she introduced me to Mika Brown. And Mika was running Pure Oasis in Grove Hall. And she needed an assistant general manager. So it was an opportunity for me to get in there and learn specifics about Massachusetts.
That's great. And you ended up back in your place that
Back
you
to
are
my
living in right
original
now before
on
you
the
left.
same couch that you and I played multiple, video games. Over the years, there were cycles of various sports games, some rock band, and we had Monopoly on the Xbox, and it wasn't quite the same as being able to like knock over the board. You
Especially with me.
tossed a couple of controllers.
Yeah, you handled my temperament well. I thank you for that.
Yeah,
Uh,
those video games got competitive.
they did, especially when you had a whole season going and it was coming down to the end.
It was stakes were high.
Yeah. So you come back to Massachusetts. Massachusetts is finally getting on board with cannabis, which it wasn't when you left. And now you're part of it. It's just crazy to me to think how you came full circle in this whole situation.
Completely full circle.
We talk about you leaving at this time in your life where you don't really have much career stuff going on. You go out into the world and get all this experience and all this stuff, life stuff. You come back and then you end up coming back to the same condo that you left with a bunch of experience and a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. The end game was always to come back home. The end game
Right.
was always to go out there, get some experience, and bring it back home. Like,
Yep.
it did end up coming back full circle, and it's amazing. It's been almost 9 years, and it's taken this long to finally, be in a place where I feel like this is it. Like this, where I'm at now, um, is what the previous 7 years have been all about. Because I've been with Lowkey for 2 years now,
Yeah,
and
talk to me about Lowkey and the new location and all that.
well, there's going to be a new location coming up.
The one that
Um,
just opened. There's a grand opening just
just
happened.
opened. Yes, we just recently had our grand opening. Like I said, DJ Slipwax and PSA were in the building. Uh, and
Codman Square.
Codman
What's the
Square,
address?
Dorchester, right on 571B Washington Street, Codman Square, Lowkey Dispensary. And we've been open for a minute, maybe a couple of months. Um, uh, and a lot of it was just a soft open period. And then we recently had our grand opening, and we recently expanded to
Oh, Riker.
anybody. We recently expanded to full operational hours, being open 10 to 9, and it's just a fucking great place. It's a great group of people to be with. My bosses, Jeff and Laura Felix. Um, the Lowkey is a economic empowerment license. It's a family-owned business, and it's a great place to be. Codman Square is a phenomenal location. Tons of foot traffic. Local community has definitely embraced the store. My boss is from Dorchester, grew up right down the street from there. So it's a great experience. It's a great place. I'm really fortunate that Jeff has entrusted me and the GM Matt um, so much in making that place what it is, and it's really, sales are increasing on the daily, on the weekly. We're ramping up. We're getting better and better, and it's fucking awesome place to be.
Word. Talk to me about the Tical strain.
So the
Method
Tical
Man.
is Method Man, Wu-Tang Clan. Him and his business partners have this cannabis brand that was operational at the time. I want to say 6 or 7 states when we started talking to them, which was Jeff, my boss, reaching out to them on Instagram, being like, "Hey, you guys are, big, huge cannabis brand, big presence in a bunch of different states, and reaching out, see how we can work together." And traditionally, when you have these licensing agreements with these, whether it be a celebrity brand or an endorsed brand or just a brand that operates in a lot of different states, and it's just a well-established brand, more often than not, those relationships are made with large-scale companies and bigger companies and multi-state operators, and it makes sense. If I'm a company that is like, hey, I got this big grow, I can do anything that you want. I've got this huge distribution network and all this support from all this, corporate company. A lot of times it makes sense for those licensing agreements to sign those deals because those are the partners that have the funds and the bandwidth and the ability to do projects like that and stuff. Lowkey is clearly not that type of company. Tical and Method Man and his partners, the guys that we work with directly, Big Z, Raz, Nut, Dave, all those guys that actually run Tical. They've got a different set of goals and a different set of values. So for them, it was more important to be working with a minority-owned business, and it was more important to work with a company that had similar goals and values, and the merging together of hip hop culture and music and art and all these different formats and genres and everything that we want to do with Lowkey as a company and a brand is very similar to what they want to do with Tical. as a brand, and the we just vibed, and it was an amazing thing. So because we don't have our own grow and our own all this stuff, so I partner up with some amazing cannabis cultivators across the state of Massachusetts, and there's a lot of them. The ones that we're working with on the Tical project, you can count on two hands. So it's a very short list of companies that are putting some incredibly high quality craft flower into this Tical packaging, and we're literally on the verge of about to be rolling it out and trickling it out to a couple of partner stores around Massachusetts. And it's not just going to be, right now it's only available at Lowkey in Codman, but the Tical brand is going to start trickling out to a handful of other stores. And again, stores that have similar stories. And our owner is very, good friends with a lot of other dispensary owners. So we have our own kind of friend network and stores. Geography has a lot to do with it too. We're going to be trickling out some Tical products. So, check out the Tical Massachusetts Instagram to see who we're going to be partnering up with and who we're going to be dropping product with, and stay with Lowkey Dispensary. I'm sure we'll update customers as well. But yeah, it's going to be really cool. And we get to work with some great cultivators. We have currently on the market two strains. One's a sativa, which is a Chem 91 crossed with G13, grown by our friends at Bailey's Buds in Lowell. And then Bailey's Buds, Phil Bailey, Gus Bailey up at Bailey's Buds. Those are our partners. And then the indica strain that we've got right now is it's a killer. It's a dual OG S1, and it's grown at this facility down in Hanson, Mass, Impressed LLC. Man, I've seen a lot of facilities in a lot of states, and these two that I just mentioned, up in Lowell, guys got a in no-till organic live soil grow, and the folks down at Impressed, the place is so amazing that you could eat off of the floor, just like the cleanest, most amazing facility. So we're super fortunate to be partnered up with companies like that. Our new strain is coming in. We're going to be launching that in the next week or so. It's going to be a sunset runch. It's going to be a great grow out Holliston, Mass, our provisions, and then some more of that Bailey's flowers coming our way. We're bringing a couple of new partners into the mix, possibly. So yeah, the Tical project is starting to move forward. And it's just so really cool to be able to say that Lowkey Dispensary is the Massachusetts partner for Method Man. This is a huge deal if this is his brand. He's in a bunch of different states. He is absolutely killing the game, and acting and everything else that he's doing. And for him and his brand and his team that I mentioned that runs the company to work with us, even though it might make sense as a business decision to work with a bigger company, shows that they care more about their brand, and there's things more important than just who can give you distribution, and who can accommodate your needs. There's things that are more important than that, and that created an opportunity for us at Lowkey that wouldn't necessarily exist if it wasn't for their goals and values. So fucking really cool. We're going to be responsible for not only the Tical flower and all the different strains, but also the Tical merchandise across Massachusetts. So it's going to be really cool, man. It's a wonderful thing. We've gotten a bunch of inquiries from stores across the state that are interested in carrying it on their shelves. And we're going to be increasing that capacity, increasing that bandwidth a little bit, and you start seeing Tical more and more in Massachusetts. It's going to be pretty sweet. But Lowkey will always be the home base for Tical in the state of Massachusetts. I got a Tical shirt for you, by the way.
Yes, hoodie or t-shirt?
It's a t-shirt. I'm working on the hoodies.
No, it's all good. It's fine. Extra large?
It is an extra large.
Sweet, man. Roll
Several
that shit
to choose from, in fact, in the extra large size.
Roll that shit like that shit smoking. All this is just so crazy to me because you know my history of almost going to jail for being caught with a few pounds.
Few pounds?
Yeah.
It's a lot of pounds.
Yeah, it was. But still, you got probably more than a few pounds sitting in your little store over there. And
it's a crazy experience, man. Knowing well and good what happened to you and knowing the details of that story. Fast forward to I remember driving through Colorado and I had a bunch of product and just a ridiculous amount of cash that I was bringing over to.
Story of my life. Sounds like my early 20s. Sounds like my teens and 20s.
One of the guys in the company, they needed to make a bank deposit early the next morning or something. And Colorado is an open carry state. So you can carry a sidearm. And as long as it's, out on your hip, you can carry a sidearm. And I've got just so much that they wanted me to bring over so that I could get deposited first thing in the morning. And there were no regulations otherwise that says I couldn't do that. So the security guard at the time says here, and he pulls his pistol off of his hip. He says, as long as you take your parka off and you can wear this 45 on your hip, you can you're good. And actually, I didn't have any product with me. It was just a lot of cash. 4 stores worth of cash deposits. It was still virtually an all cash business at the time. And like the only thing that was crossing my mind is like, I'm literally not breaking any laws right now. I am like completely legally driving around with, high 5 figures of cash and just 45 on my hip. Probably the only law that I was breaking was probably, having a vape pen in my pocket or something like that. But yeah, it was a trip to think about how many people, and particularly people of color, how many people, had their lives ruined from cannabis. And here it is, a thriving industry that even I'd been arrested for cannabis. I only had a small amount of cannabis on me at the time.
At the time.
Yeah.
Just at that time. We'll just say I'll leave it at that.
I was very fortunate, and
I'll leave it at that.
I'm very aware of the fact that I was very fortunate. A lot of people were not, and it's an absolute trip. That it's come around full circle so much that here we are running a legitimate industry with some relatively good intentions. To think about where it started and how many people have experienced stories way worse than ours.
Oh yeah. Well, brother, congrats on your success. The journey has been, love watching it, love having you be a part of mine and everything. And I'm glad we're able to do this.
The next time I'm going to interview you, right? And you can tell me all about the history of Leedz Edutainment in greater detail, because it's actually a much more interesting story than me selling cannabis all over this country.
Maybe. Word. Well, we're going to wrap up here. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to the Leedz Edutainment podcast. A very special guest, Sam Gerber, aka Sly Young, aka Bluntman Sam. Thank you, brother.
Appreciate you. Much love. Thank you, man.
Talk soon.